Hello everyone, Deanna here, and thanks so much for being here. So today's video, I am going to be doing a book review of the book Scarlet. So let's sit tight and go through this. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the summary of the book. In the second installment of the Lunar Chronicles, readers are introduced to the feisty, spirited, and closed-off Scarlet. Scarlet's been looking for her grandmere, but no one seems to be taking her seriously. Her grandmere has been missing for weeks now, and Scarlet is getting desperate for answers. She meets Wolf, who may have more answers than he's letting on. Should Scarlet be afraid of the big bad wolf? Also, how does Scarlet and her grandmere fit in with Cinder's escape from prison? Cinder has enlisted the help of suave and swoony Captain Thorn in her quest for freedom. Will these girls get the answers they so desperately seek, or are they both in more danger than they realize? So as I said, this is the second installment in the Lunar Chronicles series. I have this very nice edition where it's got this interesting cover art here with the green background, and then Scarlet with the red hair sitting with the wolf, and then on the inside we see a scene from the book of Wolf holding Scarlet jumping from a train. So this one was an interesting book, definitely. I did find Scarlet sometimes a little hard to relate with or really get into her character a lot. I also found the fact that we don't really meet Grandmere in the beginning. She's already has lost Grandmere. Our Grandmere is already missing by the time we are introduced. So I don't really feel that connection as much between Scarlet and Grandmere. So it does sometimes make it hard to really root for finding Grandmere when you don't have that background to really connect to. So I did find that did make me kind of feel a little removed from the story and what was kind of going on. I was more interested in what was happening with Cinder because we'd already learned all about Cinder in the first book. She's trying to escape from prison. She's now found Captain Thorn, which I didn't know quite how to take him when I first met him either. So there's this introduction to these new characters that you're just kind of unsure of where they fit in the grand scheme of everything, especially when in the first book we were following Cinder so closely and we really got to know Cinder and really were invested in her story and kind of what was going on with her. And so to then shift to Scarlet and Wolf was kind of like, and then just throw Captain Thorn in there too. It's like, okay, another character, where does it all fit in? So I was kind of a little apprehensive when I first started reading this because I just wanted to know what was going on with Cinder and how Cinder was going to get it out of her predicament. So I did sometimes wish like to just go back to Cinder and be like, okay, like what's going on with Cinder? Take me back to Cinder. But that might have just been a me thing, and perhaps if you read this, maybe you will enjoy Scarlet and Wolf a lot more. I know that some people love the story of Scarlet and Wolf. They really love the character of Wolf and they love the character of Scarlet, so that could be something just to keep in mind, that you could fall into that realm of readers who really love the dynamic between those two characters. For me, it just wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite of the series, to be very frank, and to say that right off the hap. Just, again, felt like I was kind of lacking that connection, which really made it hard for me to really get into it. I did find all of the action still really interesting, and I found myself wondering what did happen to Grandmere and kind of what was kind of going on and how are we going to get some of these answers. And then when it started clicking into place, it was more of like, oh, that's what's going on. So that was fun in that regard, of trying to unravel that bit of that mystery of where did Grandmere go and why did she leave. And then it got very heartbreaking as well, and very, very invested near the end of it. But overall, it just wasn't my favorite of the series. It was something that I just kind of felt more like it was just filler almost to get us to the next step in Cinder's story. I feel, that's my opinion, that it just kind of felt like it was like some fluff in there to keep us going. And honestly, sometimes I very much question Scarlet and Wolf's relationship. To me, it felt very insta-lovey in a lot of ways, and it just wasn't my absolute favorite in the series. So that's kind of how I feel about all of that, but it still was really fun, all of the storyline of figuring out. And as I saw more and more of Captain Thorne and Cinder's banter, I really loved their relationship. I love how they're almost like brother and sister, and they're kind of like playing off of each other. They're both very sarcastic, they're both very witty, and they're both kind of got that teasing nature of each other. So I really was enjoying their relationship, and as I read, the more I grew to really love Thorne as well. Like, at first I was very guarded. Is he going to do something? Is he going to betray Cinder? Like, what's happening? But the more I kind of got to know him, the more I started really loving his character and loving just his nature and everything that he was kind of bringing to the story. So I really did love that dynamic between them, which was kind of, in some ways, kind of sad, because I almost feel like they had more of a connection sometimes, or had more of like a fun wittiness than Scarlet and Wolf, because Scarlet and Wolf are so much almost the same character in a lot of ways. They're both very broody, they're both very like keep their cards close to themselves. They're both very like bit of like the misfits almost, or just there's something about them that makes them a bit of like outcasts in some ways. So they're both kind of got that. So it was almost like we're seeing two people fall in love with like themselves in some ways. So that maybe is partly why I didn't enjoy them. I really love opposites in a lot of ways, and I love when opposites attract. So just the fact that they were very similar in a lot of ways just had me feeling like, oh, well, this is almost like a no-brainer that they're going to be together. But then again, at the same time, it was like it's too fast how quick they got together, and how quick Wolf was just like so all about Scarlet. So it was just kind of made me sometimes be like, what is he seeing when she's being so guarded, and they're not really sharing that much other than maybe her passion for finding her grandmare. And then I just like, sometimes it was frustrating too, in like she hated him so much. So like it's trying to be like a bit of an enemies to lovers, but like it's almost in a way that she trusted him before he really deserved to be trusted, and she was so angry with him and like wanted to like fight him, but then she's just like, oh, okay, let's just go along. Like, it's, to me, some of it was so blatantly obvious, kind of some of his part in it, but she was so thrown for a loop, even though it was kind of like, duh. So, again, that probably is more my cynical analysis type brain thinking of like the play of like the way the story was playing out instead of just enjoying the characters. But to me, it was just really hard to enjoy these characters, because I felt like there was something missing, and I did feel like sometimes she was too quick, especially with the type of character that Scarlet is supposed to be, where she's supposed to be so like determined and bold and brave, and she's supposed to be like so invested in finding Grandmere, but sometimes she's just kind of like, oh, okay, let's just go along. So I don't know, I just remember sometimes thinking, well, that was a really quick turnaround, and I didn't really get the like play out that maybe that should have happened. It was like, oh, I'm mad, okay, whoops, choop, doom, suddenly I'm not. Like, she was very, very more wishy-washy than I think she should have been in some way, considering the basis of her character and like what her character is supposed to be. Sometimes she didn't feel authentic in that. She felt very kind of just all over the place. I felt like the character of Scarlet wasn't as clearly defined as she could be, and that I think sometimes is what made me not enjoy her character as much, unfortunately. There definitely changes as the story progresses, so I will just say that as the series progresses, I do start to fall in love with Scarlet a heck of a lot more. But in this one, other than just loving how fiercely determined she is to find her grandmere, I didn't really love a whole lot else about her, because she wasn't quite as kick butt as she was trying to be portrayed as, when really she was kind of just having to be saved by the big bad wolf in a lot of ways and things like that. So that was just kind of my thoughts on this one. I'm just really glad that her character did very much evolve as the series went on. So that was a little, like, there's a little bit of some needing, obviously you need to read Cinder to even be able to read this one, because you really need to know where Cinder's character is and what's all happening with the whole world before you just jump into this one. And if you jumped into this one without reading Cinder, you're going to probably be very confused on what's going on, and you're also going to be very spoiled by everything that happens in Cinder. So definitely read Cinder first before you read Scarlet, because this just picks right up where Cinder left off and just gets you running. So I did love that part. I did love that it was just boom, Cinder, and then right into this. But you also do have to then get to also know Scarlet and kind of her story. But yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say about this one, because it wasn't really one of my ultimate favorites. It was just kind of like, okay, we got to learn some background. We got to learn a bit more of kind of what happened to Cinder and how Cinder fits in with Scarlet. So that was interesting. But other than that, it was again more of just like a filler. Honestly, I can't think of anything else where it really stuck out to me, anything significant or anything like, I did annotate it, as you see here, annotated. I got like the green was parts that I didn't like, and there's a lot of green, unfortunately. The purple is parts that I usually found were funny, and I think a lot of times, like even probably looking at this, okay, this is Wolf and Scarlet, but there were times, a lot of the purples are a lot of times more so, sometimes they were getting to be like Captain Carswell Thorne. Like, oh, you can't see. It was a lot of times, it was Captain Carswell Thorne that was some of these purples, because a lot of what he was saying, or him and his banter with Cinder, is really what made me laugh the most in this book. There's a couple little lovey scenes in here. We've got your characters that were orange. What else did I have? I had info character. The yellow was important. We had some blue that was sad, of course. It did get sad near the end of the book. But yeah, a lot of greens, unfortunately, though. And that sometimes was just maybe the character of Ran as well, which we meet in this book, which I really just did not like him. I think his character was interesting though. Kind of almost would have loved to see more of what drove him, because he was such a contrast in a lot of ways from Wolf, and I would have loved to see a bit more of that dynamic. But yes, I don't want to get into too much about that without spoiling. So this is spoiler free, as this one is. I'm hoping at some point to do a whole series kind of discussion, because I absolutely fell in love with Lunar Chronicles. Speaking of which, I should show you my love for Lunar by showing you journal entry I did. So here we have the entry I did in my journal for this book, which I read in February, and I had kind of played around with how I wanted to kind of portray like Scarlet, because this is supposed to be a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, if you didn't get, with the whole big bad wolf and the grandmother being missing and all of that fun stuff. Very much like has those kind of Little Red Riding Hood kind of undertones, and Scarlet, of course, is supposed to be Little Red Riding Hood. So I did kind of draw my best at drawing a person in a red cloak, and then of course the outline here of the big bad wolf, Lunar Chronicles, the moon that the wolf could howl at. I've got the little kind of saying from the Little Red Riding Hood story, which is like, what big eyes you have, better to see with, what big ears you have, better to hear you with, and what big teeth you have, better to eat you with. And then I have just some of my thoughts on the book as well, and I used like this pretty roses to kind of represent like the red for Scarlet, and kind of like her kind of farming a bit life as well, because she is a farmer, and just kind of get some of those elements, and I just thought they were really pretty as well. And yeah, this one I gave 4 stars, so I didn't hate this book at all. Anything I'm saying here, I did not hate this book. This book was still very fun, very interesting, very like exciting, and a nice writing pace, writing style I absolutely love. Keeps you really just like really going fast paced with this story, and it's one that I didn't want to put down. Like, I wanted to quickly finish this to just like keep going through the series. So definitely not one that I hated by any means. It just wasn't my favorite of the series, but that's how good this series is, that it's a 4 star still. It's still like one that, even though it's not my favorite, it's still an amazing story, and it's still a lot of fun. And I immediately picked up the next book. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I will say that some of the twists and things like that were interesting to read, and like I said, like learning some of what was kind of going on, like there was a lot of interesting parts and interesting story. And yeah, I don't want to spoil, but I will say that it was still a fun read, even if I didn't 100% love Wolf and Scarlet. And I know there's some big huge diehard Wolf and Scarlet fans. By kind of going through some of the posts and doing a little bit of research on this, I know that there's some huge loves of Wolf and Scarlet. Some of them, like, that is their character, like their relationship of this series. So don't take what I'm saying as like you might not like them, because you might end up absolutely loving them. It just wasn't my favorite, and I still I love them more as the story kind of progressed as well. Yes, that was Scarlet, definitely 4 stars by Marissa Meyer of the Lunar Chronicles. Really recommend, if you haven't picked up this series, to check it out. But that's going to be it for me with the Scarlet book, the second in the series. As much as it wasn't my favorite, which I say, it was still an awesome story, and it was still like phenomenal. So really love it, really had a lot of fun reading it, and just continuing to read more about the Lunar Chronicles. So that was it. If you've read Scarlet, let me know. If you love Wolf and Scarlet, please let me know in the comments below. If you're a big Wolf and Scarlet fan, I want to know what about their relationship do you really love. Maybe there was something that I just kind of didn't get as much. So if you really want to like kindly defend them in the comments below, have at it, because I'd love to kind of see, maybe was there something I just didn't get about their relationship, or maybe something I kind of overlooked. But I'd love to hear it. Other than that, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourselves, and you will see me next time. Bye!